This is going to be like a little bit of a meta-analysis here that I'm going to give you. Trump supporters do not know English. Now, what is English? When I say English, I'm talking about a language, right? What is language? A group of sounds, right, that make up words that we all agree have a common meaning. Trump supporters do not believe in English. They do not believe in language. They do not believe in a shared language. They don't. Hear me out here, right? Like when you say, I think we should guarantee health care to citizens, it would save us tax dollars, it costs less, and it gives us better quality health care. What they hear is socialism! Ah! Socialism, 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 right? But when you look up socialism, does it say anything about a government doing stuff? Does it say anything about tax dollars? Does it say anything about community benefits? No, it doesn't. But if you say fire department, they're not going to scream socialism. Why? Because we already have a fire department. Again, socialism to them is not a word, right? It's like they act like in a literal sense like a bull with like the red cape, right? They see anything that their brain has convinced themselves looks like socialism, and they get angry, they get upset. All rational and logical behavior falls out the window. Trump supporters are emotionally fragile snowflakes. They don't agree on definitions. That's why when you try to tell them communism is a stateless society, right, they will keep talking about what Joseph Stalin did in the 1940s, right? Because they don't give a fuck about history. They don't give a fuck about language. They don't care what the definition of communism is. They don't care what the definition of socialism is. They don't give a flying fuck, because to them, language isn't something that we all agree upon, that we all use to participate in a society that makes it slightly easier to participate in. To them, language is a weapon. It is a tool that they utilize, and they try to, wrap around their conspiracy theories with. That's how you get Trump supporters who go from just regular normal people to thinking that commies are evil and they're going to kill them. Like, what? Communism as an ideology is literally just like hippies sitting in a circle smoking weed and giving each other health care. That's what communism is. But somehow, hippies sitting in a circle smoking weed has turned into some like evil devil. The idea that your child should be allowed to have health care is evil. Like, how do you convince someone that they shouldn't care for their child? I don't know. I really don't. But all I know is that Donald Trump has figured out how to do that. The Republican Party has figured out how to do that. And this is a project that has for years, decades. And this is what I always talk about, the American mythology. And I spell America with 3 Ks. The American mythology, right? Since like Ronald Reagan especially, but you could go back to like Woodrow Wilson, right? Democrat President Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson screened Birth of a Nation at the White House, right? What that was an attempt to rewrite history. That was history. What is history? Well, history has facts, right? Things objectively happened. I have a lighter here, right? I'm objectively lighting the lighter. Now, you can say that I never lit it. You can say that the flame never appeared. But there is an objective fact. This lighter was lit. I have video evidence. But there's people out there that will claim that it wasn't. So that goes back into the history thing. You have a KKK Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, screen Birth of a Nation at the White House. Right? The film was designed to rehabilitate the Confederacy. That project, along with the Daughters of the Confederacy from the 1880s all the way up until the 1930s, their project, their goal was to rehabilitate the Confederacy, to put the Confederacy's lost cause inside the American mythology. And again, I spell American with 3 Ks here. That's what that project was. It was the foundation, or one of the foundations, of what I think are the modern reality splits. The people that just live in an entirely different universe, where the Civil War wasn't over slavery, it was over states' rights. And when you ask them states' rights to what, then it gets a little confusing. They don't really know how to respond to that. Their little programmed NPC talking points aren't prepared for that, right? But then you see Ronald Reagan come into office. Ronald Reagan, a big tough guy, an actor, someone who knows how to tell people what they want to say, right? Ronald Reagan was able to wrap around this conservative corporate like hand job fucking policy, right? Into the American male is under attack, into you got to be a real man, provide for your own family. We're going to make sure that corporations steal all your money because you don't want handouts. Handouts are socialist. Look at those commies over in Europe. They're socialist. They're giving their constituents health care. They're giving their constituents food. That's socialism. Look at what they're doing in France. It's socialism. Look what they're doing in Norway. It's socialism. That's what they tell us today. Back then, it was look what they're doing in the Soviet Union. Look what they're doing in Cuba. It's all socialist. It's all evil. Yeah, sure, some of the things that they're doing are bad, right? And we're going to highlight those bad things that those evil empires are doing and then wrap that into the idea, see, look, Stalin gave his people health care, and then he put them in gulags. It's a slippery slope. It's all part of the American mythology. They've got themselves an alternative version of history. And this goes back into my thesis here, right? This goes back into my thesis of Trump supporters. They don't speak English. They don't. Right? They might get triggered when they hear a Spanish-speaking person in a grocery store, and they might tell them to speak English, but they themselves don't speak English. They themselves don't know anything about America's actual history. That's why you see senators like Tom Cotton and Donald Trump, right, the President of the United States, talk about how the 1619 Project and critical race theory is destroying America. It's rewriting America's history. No, it's not. It's shining a light and putting a magnifying glass under the parts that we have been trying to ignore. We as a country have been trying to ignore since the inception of our country. It's always been there. Those books have always been there. It's just a matter of how we read them and how we interpret them. Again, this lighter, I did light the lighter. There was a flame that came out of this lighter. You can say that there wasn't if it makes you feel better, but that doesn't change the fact that the lighter objectively and actually was lit. And that's the situation we're at when it comes to Trump supporters. They all are in an alternate reality. They live in an alternate reality with an altered history. And that's why it's so dangerous. Because now we have, with the advent of the internet, conspiracy theories like QAnon, right? We have the ability, Republicans have the ability to use that American mythology, right? The idea that, educators are trying to shine a light on more black people throughout history, get their perspectives instead of just looking at what Thomas Jefferson and other white people had to say all the time. The idea that highlighting non-white voices in American history is so fundamentally absurd to these people that they have to oppose it at all costs. So you have the intersection. Right, of educators, historians, right? Donald Trump is out there on Twitter today mocking historians, right? So you have historians going out there and saying, look, these books that we haven't really been reading from the 18th century, the 17th century, right? They show us a kind of a different view of our country's history that you have been telling us, you being like Republicans and previously Democrats have been mythologizing, right? Right? You're telling us America was great, and look, it's all the slavery and all this evil and all this stuff, right? And so, so they see that magnifying glass, and that scares them. They see the idea that history could be looked at in a different way, and it scares them. And that's how we're at this heightened sense of divisiveness in this country, because you have people that have spent their lives over the last 50 years. Their first vote was for Ronald Reagan. Their first vote was for like someone like Richard Nixon. Right? They were sold an alternative version of America that they have passed on down to their kids. They voted for Nixon. They voted for Reagan. Their kids voted for W. Right? Their kids' voted for Trump. It's all a project of handing down an alternative version of history to their offspring. And that's how you have the daughters of the Confederacy, the children of those who fought in the Civil War, trying to peddle the idea that the Civil War wasn't about slaves. It was about a lost cause. They just got a little carried away. They wanted states' rights, and they got a little carried away. And then the daughters of the Confederacy had kids. The daughters of the Confederacy, they grew up to vote for people like Richard Nixon, right? They grew up to participate in Jim Crow society. They grew up throwing, like, water bottles at black people walking down the street. This is what their history was. This is their reality. And then they had children, and those children voted for Ronald Reagan. Those children were like, my parents, they solved racism. Racism is over. Yeah, sure, we might have been really mean to black people just when I was a kid. I used to see it, but it's over now. We fixed it. They convinced themselves that it's in the past, right? 20 years later, you got George W. Bush, the war on terror. You got these people thinking Islam's going to kill us all. We need to all huddle around our shared American mythology. America, America. Don't you love America? Well, what is America? Right? And then you've got Donald Trump, right? Following the first black president. There was a poll done in 2007. More Americans in 2007, a majority of Americans, thought that Republicans were to the left of Democrats on race. It wasn't until Barack Obama started running in the presidential primaries and was winning that a majority of Americans realized, oh, the Democrats are to the left on race compared to Republicans. The Republican Party that had spent 10 years up at that point putting on this fake show, the war on terror, right? Oh no, they're totally to the left of Democrats on race. That's how ignorant and mythologized American history is. That's how people, like, they just thought it because they don't think twice. When an authority tells them something, they don't question it. They don't have that natural skepticism that young people today do. They don't have that. They were never given that. They were brainwashed since birth. And so you've got this project of American mythology that's been passed down from generation after generation, a flame. The torch has been passed for over 100 years, 200 years now, that those that participated in the Civil War, that tried to murder their fellow Americans over the right to own black people as property, those people have won. Those people have successfully brainwashed all of American children up until this generation. Can you imagine the kids these days? What they would say during, like, if 9/11 happened today? Now imagine the demographics, everyone is the same, right? We're just transported into the 9/11 universe. Kids these days would not accept the war on terror. They would not accept anti-Muslim bigotry. They would not accept that today. Kids these days, with the advent of the internet, are skeptical of power. They're skeptical of authority because now, with the advent of the internet, we can see what's really been going on, right? And kids these days are grown up. They're trained on how to use the internet. They've got basic senses of media literacy that boomers and Generation X people that are maybe more that have a higher proclivity of being Trump supporters, they don't have that media literacy. They see a meme on Facebook and they think it's factual. Whereas a 19-year-old, they're going to look up that meme and they're going to see, oh, Snopes debunked this 7 months ago, right? They're going to see all that kind of stuff. Because young people, they know how to use the internet. They're well informed. They're well intended, right? They're so far detached from Jim Crow laws, from the Civil War. They don't care about racism. There's a few of the offspring that do, right? That's why you have like 80 to 90% of young people voting for Joe Biden. There's a little bit of Trumpism in this age group, but it's only a little bit. Most of the kids these days are all right. They actually care about English, and this goes back into my thesis. I know I've been a little long here, but Republicans and Trump supporters, they don't believe in the shared language and the shared history that we as a society have. They don't believe that communism has a definition. To them, it means whatever they want it to mean. Communism 1 minute can mean something like, oh, giving poor people health care, that's communism. The next minute, communism is when a police officer kills someone. Look at what they did under Obama. Cops were bad under Obama. Now Trump is in the presidency. Now cops are good. I wonder how long it's going to take for cops to be bad again. Because they don't care. Communism is anything that they disagree with. It doesn't have a definition. Because it doesn't need one for these people to believe it anyway. Anyway, that's my little long-winded rant. I'm sorry, I'm a little high, and I just kind of went off on that. But this is stuff I've been thinking about. Like, these people, they literally live in a different universe. And they're here right now, in this chat room, right now. These people are here. They're interacting with us. But they've got an entirely separate version of history, an entirely separate version of language. But yeah, again, nothing that a human being could say would ever crack that shell, because they've been successfully programmed. It's like trying to teach a dog not to woof. It's like teaching a cat not to play with a ball of yarn. You might be able to do it. It might be possible. But, there comes a point where the damage that, will be done has already been done. They've been woofing for 15 years. They're not going to stop now.